George, what a week 10. Saw some exciting football. Got that Hail Mary out there in Arizona. Well, I guess out here in Arizona. Good week, yeah? How'd you do?
Did well in fantasy. Didn't do so well in pick'ems, but there were a lot of really great matchups and a lot of great upsets.
Yeah, good. It was a good, fun week of football. Definitely entertaining. So, plus my Colts pulled out a huge win for me. So, let's roll. All right. So here we are at the M&M show. We're back with you for week 11. Talk some fantasy football. Talk about what we liked and didn't like from the week that was. George, you with me?
I'm with you. Let's do this.
Let's go. Welcome back to the show. We do have a great week for you. We've got some exciting talking points. I kind of touched on it a little bit. Hopkins catch.
Mm-hmm.
What a throw. What a
Oh,
catch.
yeah.
And how does Buffalo let that happen? There were three guys. And Hopkins went up and got that ball. Come on. Inexcusable.
It was certainly exciting. It was heartbreaking for anybody that was going up against Hopkins.
Yeah, oh yeah.
In their league, but there was a lot of exciting finishes to games this week.
Yeah, there were. Colts got a huge win in the AFC South race, beating Tennessee. So they're up there, but I mean, it's not. I mean, good Lord, they play Green Bay this week, Tennessee again next week. So the schedule's not exactly slowing down for them. But hopefully we can continue to see them win. Still no love for our boy JTT though. I just don't think they're using him right, but that's a different story for a different time. I think maybe. What do you think?
It's getting to be. It looks a lot like Nyheim Hines is going to be the best option to start there, if any option at all. I know the next couple of weeks are really going to show a lot about like what your final like go-to playoff lineup's going to be. I don't necessarily think JT is going to be part of it in any of my leagues, just because there's just so much left to be desired about his usage.
Yeah, and I can't disagree with you there. And then the last kind of big question I have, like, who wins the NFC East? And I hit you up about this, I think, on Monday. But, I mean, you still see Philly with the lead there. They're all still really bad. I guess they're all theoretically still in contention. But nope, like I would actually make the argument with Alex Smith that I think the best team might even be the Redskins, because that the football team. Sorry, please don't pull that off YouTube. The Washington football team would be the best team just based on that defense. What do you think?
I think the Washington football team is good. I'm excited. They have a really great wide receiver one. Their Gibson starting to really show off.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that at the end of the day, the more complete team is the Eagles. I think that they're going to end up winning the NFC East. I think probably with like 5 wins is going to be enough to get there.
Well, they may win it because of the tie.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be interesting. So I'll tell you, I'll make this known to you right now. Maybe you have it tracked. I apparently didn't save our fantasy numbers from last week, who we picked. So we can just jump right into talking points if you want to, and the players we're excited about.
Yeah, I know. I know I didn't do so great with my selection, so we might as well just skip right back over to this week.
We'll just move forward then. How's that sound?
Yeah.
So I know I beat you on the pick'ems, but that's about all I know. So, and I know DJ Moore is looking more and more like a lock to go ahead and beat JT for our side bet. So, and the lack of use, and I mean, we talked about that in week 2 when Mac went down. I was like, man, well, JT's that's it. And I still think that should be the case, and it's not. So, whatever. So I'll tell you who I'm excited about, and I pulled you this week. I'm going to start with my quarterback. I picked guys off of my fantasy team that I am excited about. I'm going to start with my quarterback. I think you already see this coming because you know me well enough. Kyler Murray's going to have himself a big old day up in Seattle, assuming the rain and the wind don't knock him down. So that's my quarterback. Going to have a monster game. Really excited to start him this week.
I think that's interesting because those two teams usually play each other pretty tight, and sometimes it is a defensive game.
We don't have to
But
look very many weeks back, and we saw Kyler Murray have a big old monster game against Seattle. So, and
it's
what was
true.
a shootout.
I mean, that's true. And then Seattle can't really stop anything at this point, so should be
Neither of
good.
these defense can stop anybody. So, who's your quarterback this week? Who's got you feeling the jitters?
So I'm doing the same thing. I'm going with teams that I own, or players that I own on the different teams, on the 7 different teams I've got. One of the ones I haven't picked so far because he hasn't been an option is I picked Drew Brees last week. I'm going to pick Jameis Winston this week.
Hey-o, you went and got him?
Well, I mean, I have a total quarterback league, so whoever's starting for the Saints is going to be
For
my
the Saints,
quarterback.
there you go. That's your quarterback. I like that out of you.
I think he could sling it, and if he's learned some of the lessons that he's been taught over the past 10 or 11 weeks about being protective of the ball, he really has a potential for really racking up some yards.
No, I don't. I mean, his problem was never. I mean, he led the league in yards last year, if I'm not mistaken, and he threw a ton of touchdown passes. I think he threw 30 touchdown passes and 30 picks. So that's always been his problem, is just the turnovers. My running back this week, we've talked about how excited we've been about him. I think you've even picked him, but I'm really, really excited about Swift. He's looking more and more. You got your wish. They took him out of the box. Maybe a week or two later than maybe you would want to see. But man, Swift is looking really, really good in Detroit.
Yeah, Swift is looking good, even especially if you have him in, say, like maybe a keeper league, or if you have him in a dynasty league, you're really liking who you picked up. My pick is also somebody that you could say this about is Antonio Gibson.
Gibby's been good the last few weeks.
He's looking really good. It's just he's got a little bit too much competition by way of just the dumper
McKinnon.
passes to McKissick, yeah. But I think he's due for another really big game this week. So I'm gonna jump on the Antonio Gibson bandwagon.
I like that out of you. My wide receiver this week, he's been on my love list and my hate list before. I'm back to loving him, mainly because I think he's got a good shot to have a big game against the Cowboys. I'm going back with Adam Thielen and putting him back on the train. The Cowboys have actually done a decent job this year stopping the run, and I think they sell out to stop Cook, knowing that the only chance they even come close to winning a game is by stopping Dalvin Cook. And when they sell out to stop Cook, Thielen's gonna I think it'll be Thielen instead of Jefferson who's gonna make some plays. So that's my hope anyway. Who's your wide receiver this week? Yeah.
So let's get weird. It used to be the fantasy Santa Claus used to be Robbie Anderson. I am hoping that the Jets still have a fantasy Santa Claus, and his name is Brashard Perriman.
Brashard Perriman. I was looking at him earlier too.
Joe Flacco is starting again this week. He seems to have some good chemistry with him.
Yeah, he does.
They're playing against the beatable Chargers secondary. So I'm going to go with Brashard Perriman. Let's go. Let's get it done.
I think that I don't even think that's that weird. I like that pick. I really do. That's a little bit clever. It's a sneaky pick. I like that pick. Let me tell you a guy who's got me worried, and it's not. He was already injured, so I'm going to go with Gardner Minshew for my quarterback that I'm worried about. It's not like obviously he was hurt, so it's not that like I look at it and like, have you seen a big difference between him and this Jake kid they got playing now? And my point being, like, Minshew mania was over, and outside of that, the guy they got, who was a guy they drafted this year a little bit later, plus they're going to have they're going to have a good draft pick. They're going to have an opportunity to go draft a Fields. And so when I see that, I think I think Minshew time is done. This is a guy you were like, oh, this is a keeper guy, and he's going to have another big year, and he's going to be their starter for a few more years. You're not keeping him this year because they're going to draft somebody, or like I think they're done with Minshew.
Well, those are words that were never spoken by me, but I was very excited for him. I like the energy that he brought. I like the young team, the young nucleus around him. It's almost painful to bring up the Jaguars this week because they did play a very competitive game, but my boy James Robinson got 2 touchdowns taken away by penalty. Um, so pretty frustrating, but yes, I don't think Minshew is going to get another chance at being starting quarterback this year.
You got a quarterback out there that's got you worried?
Sure, yeah. So for a quarterback that has me worried, I didn't like what I saw out of Carson Wentz this week.
That was next on my list. Yeah,
So
Wentz wasn't looking good.
and again, somebody I own, and somebody that I invested in, and I'm starting down the stretch, or I'm thinking about starting down the stretch. He just didn't perform well. I don't know if it was. I don't know if weather was a factor. I don't know what was going on there, but he just wasn't very crisp with his throws, and like
Sure.
I didn't like the way that he worked in Miles Sanders, who was my running back for last week as well, that I was excited about. So I just feel like with all the weapons that he really didn't get the job done.
It's hard to disagree with that. I know I double stacked somebody last week. I wonder who it was. Might have been, it wouldn't have been Kyler Murray. So I'll tell you a running back who's got me concerned, right? Um, and it's actually like this is a little bit in that Minshew realm, Miles Gaskin, right? So when I look at him, he was a 6th-round pick, and he's been fine this year. The guy they brought in has been just as serviceable. The Dolphins are still winning games, and you just have to assume that, like again, going into next year, like they're not looking to keep Miles Gaskin. They're going to draft somebody. It doesn't take much to draft somebody a little higher than 6th round, and so I just wonder what that looks like long term, and if that's a guy that they're that's really going to get much of a chance moving forward. I think if he comes back this year and he's healthy, he'll get the starting job back this year. I just don't know that I see him in there long term as the Dolphins starter.
Yeah, that's the bad part about, and well, obviously there's a lot of bad parts about getting injured, but Salvin Ahmed has been able to get in there and just actually do a really decent
Yeah, be
job,
fine. Yeah, be fine.
be
Just as good as
serviceable.
Gaskin. Yeah.
Yeah, even their one castaway, Balaj, is doing really well in San Diego. So it seems like anything that Miami touches at this point is serviceable
Let's also
to put out
remember
there.
they tried to trade Balaj to the Jets. Then he was released and signed with the Jets, left the Jets, and is now actually like looking good with the Chargers.
Hmm.
So that's it. You mentioned that. Josh Kelly was the other guy I had out here because like it's been okay this year, but you have a guy like Balaj. Eckler's coming back next week, maybe 2 weeks. Eckler's coming back soon. Justin Jackson looked good. Basically, like Josh Kelly's been okay, but he has looked like the worst of the backs that they've really like used this year. Now he's
I like
hurt, and maybe it's just the rookie, right? Rookies make mistakes, but it gives you concern and pause for concern.
I like Josh Kelly long term,
Yeah,
kind of like what you were alluding to. But yeah, for this year, there's just too many cooks in the kitchen. The only like decent thing that happened in that backfield is the fact that can't think of his name right now, got hurt. Uh, allowed for some additional room there, but otherwise, yeah, it's too crowded of a backfield for Josh Kelly. He really made some splashes at first, but now it's just kind of maybe a next year thing. Maybe like a think about him when other people aren't thinking about him as one of the last picks of
yeah,
next year's draft.
sure. Who's the running back that's giving you the willies?
I'm gonna go with James Conner. Uh,
Yeah,
he's still sadly in a PPR. He's still RB 15. And that just says a lot more about the injuries that have happened this year, as opposed to like
yeah.
how consistent and how good he's been. The past few weeks, the Steelers have really, well, not 2 weeks ago, but this week the Steelers were really doing great, but it was through the air mostly. Very concerned about the role he has there, concerned about the amount of importance they put on getting the running game going there.
Sure.
So like going into my fantasy playoffs, having him as like a RB1, RB2 on my team is
It's a
making me
concern.
very very concerned.
Yep. I'll tell you what, the wide receiver, and this is not a long-term issue. I'll admit that right now. This week, I'm concerned about the Bucks wide receiver group. There's a bunch of them there, and the Rams have been the toughest defense against wide receivers this year from a fantasy perspective. And I think the Rams will have the ability to get after Tom Brady. And the Bucks, like they've had some big games this year, and like you think about it, they lost week 1 to New Orleans. They lost, what was it, week 3 or 4 on that Thursday nighter against Chicago. They lost again to New Orleans. Like if they have a big game against a team that's decent, it feels like they kind of shrink into a hole. And this is a good team coming to town, right? Big game. And this might be a scenario where that Buck wide receiver group kind of goes away a little bit, and Tom Brady doesn't quite have it, and the offensive line doesn't quite have it, and we might see some I won't say goose eggs on the board, but you just may not see some stats you want to see out of a guy like Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, you know.
Yeah, so there's a term in the firefighter industry. You put at the end of the day, you put the wet stuff on the red stuff. So at the end of the day, are you concerned enough with Tampa Bay's wide receivers to not start them in a league that you need to win for to get into the playoffs?
Absolutely. I'm so if you go look at it in our league, right? I'm starting in a game I need to win this week. I'm starting Brandon Cooks, and I'm starting Adam Thielen, and I'm sitting Chris Godwin. And in my flex, I'm starting Chase Edmonds because I believe that's just going to be a shootout
Hmm.
in Seattle. So although I think his estimated points 12 and a half, 12.8. Again, last time Seattle came to town, and I know it's not going to go exactly the same, but both those teams are going to be chucking the ball all over the field, and I'm okay with that. Let them do it, and let's just rack up the catches with Chase Edmonds because we know that's not a forte um, for really anybody else, really any other back in that game.
Right. Yeah, I think it's spot on. And this is the time where if you have your hunches, you need to go with them, or you're going to regret it if you don't. Um, for me, I went with the same sort of feel instead of the anyone on the Bucks. Rest of the year, I'm concerned about any wide receivers on the Bears.
Yeah, yeah, because you don't even and I haven't seen anything on Foles, but I know he got hurt. I saw Foles get hurt. Bray came in, and I don't really know anything about that guy. 6th year in the league, and he's thrown a handful of passes, and we already know what we have with Trubisky. So not a lot good there. So I'll agree with you there. Um, so that kind of covers that. So let's move to another spot. If these are the guys we're worried about, right, and maybe you're looking for some waiver help, what do you think the value of a guy like Taysom Hill is going to be, right? Because I'll start with this. Jameis Winston's going to be the starter there. I know, we're going to wait to name a starter. It's going to be Jameis Winston. I think we're all pretty comfortable with that. I think anybody, like if I'm the opposing, I don't know who the Saints have this week, but if I'm going up against them, I'm planning to play Jameis Winston. That being said, I think you also have to plan to get a lot of Taysom Hill running the ball, gadget plays, like all that nonsense. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you look right now on ESPN, he's listed as he's eligible for tight end and he's eligible for quarterback. He throws one touchdown pass for a decent amount of yards, and suddenly he is a tight end one. So I think you really have to consider that. I think he's worth more in leagues where he can be considered either a tight end or a quarterback. Quarterback to me is super risky. If you have a league where there's a total quarterback opportunity, I always thought that the Saints were more attractive because of the fact that they do have Taysom Hill and they have Drew Brees. Now with Jameis Winston, I don't necessarily think that value goes down. If anything, it stays steady.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'll say this. I absolutely would never start him as a quarterback. The other thing I would say is if he does somehow magically get the start, he loses his tight end designation for the rest of the year. which I find very interesting. So this could be a 1 week stream him, start him, and then move on.
See, that's interesting to me because I've thought before that it's more attractive when I've seen this more in Yahoo leagues where the running back gets the designation of a tight end. Um, and then they continue that designation for the rest of the year. I didn't realize ESPN's going to change that designation if he starts once. But that's something to consider. This he might just be like a one and done for this week if you really are desperate at tight end.
Yeah, I mean, again, he can play as many snaps. He just can't be the starter. If he's the starter, he loses his tight end designation.
I mean, for the amount of value that you have, you probably have at tight end. It might be worth a pickup.
We have a streaming option, yeah, as long as you don't have a Kelsey. You know what I mean? I mean, really, Kelsey's the only guy out there right now that's performing with any Kelsey and Waller with any sort of regularity from a tight end position.
For sure, yeah, and you want to keep in mind too. This is the second to last week that there's bye weeks happening.
Yep.
So you want to keep an eye on it for folks to pick up. You want to keep in mind that anybody that's dropped from like say Buffalo, that's like a skill position player. Anybody from San Francisco, maybe somebody gives up on Raheem Mostert, and you could use him kind of
Beat
down the
me to it.
stretch. Right, sorry about that.
No,
But
you're
yeah,
okay.
so
He's owned in 80, just a little over 80% of leagues. The other guy had in that same where I had a couple guys there, and that they were injured. Some people might have given up, not a ton. Eckler still owned in 80+% of leagues on ESPN, but that means somebody's giving it. So just go check that because he'll be back soon. Mostert's going to be back in a couple of weeks. Julian Edelman is supposed to be back in a couple of weeks, and I know he wasn't great before that. They don't have anybody else. Jacoby Myers is not the answer. They don't have anybody else to throw the ball to, and so that's a guy that like if you're desperate and if you're picking up people in week 13, you're probably desperate. And then another guy streaming, we talked about tight ends. If you do need a good tight end streamer, Logan Thomas, I'm willing to bet is going to have like a good rapport with Alex Smith. And again, I mean, he was actually had some good games with Kyle Allen when he was starting. And I think a more veteran, basically anybody but Haskins is going to be able to use Logan Thomas. So had a good week last week. He's not a guy that's going to score you 30 points, 20 points from the tight end position. He'll get you in double digits, which like realistically for me, if I have a tight end that gets in double digits, I'm thrilled.
yeah, if you have a spot or two left over, Zach Ertz is off his injury designation. I know he wasn't doing so hot. Could have been part of the injury. Could have not been, but Dallas Goedert hasn't been getting it done. So might as well pick him up. He could be a high end tight end one. It's not a very good shot, but it's worth a shot.
Yeah, I mean at this point, right? It's if you're tight ends have this has not been the year of the tight end. I think that's what we can safely say. You know, a lot of injuries. I mean, the big one obviously to Kittle. That if you were a Kittle owner and you were getting because that you expended a lot of points or a lot of draft capital for Kittle, and that kills.
Yeah, if you look at this week, a ton of most of the quality that you got out of your skill position players was that wide receiver. Um, 20, 30 wide receivers deep got somewhere in the range of like 13 points in a PPR. So they definitely overperformed. The tight ends and the running backs underperformed.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It's a passing league, man. It's a passing league. So, George, what do you have to send us off to the break with?
Oh, not much. I mean, now's the time where you're really hunkering down, finding what value's out there, and just going with who you trust. Or something's not working, shake it up because there's only a couple of weeks to be able to qualify for the playoffs. There's a lot of wide receivers that are out there. You kind of just pick what your poison is. There's a lot that are becoming available, getting healthy, from a Lazard to a Michael Pittman to a Sammy Watkins. Just go with what your gut is, and then hopefully it all pans out for this crucial time where it's time to qualify for the fantasy championships.
Yeah, no, I'm there with you. I think the one thing I'd add to that is, again, a lot of guys that have been on injuries. So keep an eye for those guys that are coming off injuries that you might be able to go sneak it out there. And then the other thing is, if you're still looking to make trades, like this week, next week are kind of the last trade deadline. So make sure you get those in. So with that, M&M Nation, we're going to go on to the pick'em round, where, we're going to do better than we did last week. So appreciate y'all.
Worse.
Cannot be much worse. Appreciate y'all joining us. We'll see you around the bend.